Alright, so we've taken a look at interest, so the concept that money, if left in an account, will grow, or a loan, the amount that we owe will increase over time. So as time passes, the value of something increases. We looked at two different ways: simple, increasing by a constant amount, versus compound, where it increases by a percent. Okay, so it's changing each time, the increase. Now we're going to look at the opposite, where something loses value over time. Okay, that's called depreciation. Okay. So as we've got here, our first definition, depreciation, well, that's an estimate of the value lost by an asset over time. So the concept of, I start with something being worth a certain amount, and over time the value that it's worth goes down. In particular, items such as cars, electronics, and appliances, they undergo pretty significant depreciation. So their value is really going to change over time. If I try to sell an iPhone 1 today, it wouldn't go for very much because it's depreciated to the point where it's really, it's at its scrap value, which we'll chat about in just a second. So the reason we have to talk about this depreciation is in particular for when we're claiming taxes. So if I drive my car to work every day and I'm claiming that on my taxes, you need to be specific as to the value that it's worth, okay? And you need to be telling the truth. So if you bought a $20,000 car 4 years ago, you can't be claiming that it's worth $20,000 now, and you wouldn't want to, okay? So in particular, depreciation is important for when we're claiming tax deductions. You have to claim what an object is worth, not what you originally paid for it, okay? So we're going to use depreciation to help us do that. A couple of keywords that we're going to be talking about when we work on depreciation questions, so just changing the terminology slightly. The first is the future value. So this is essentially our VN. Okay, so that's our VN, our current value. So future value, it can also be called the book value or the depreciated value. So depreciation, okay, is the value lost. So depreciation is what it goes down by. The value it becomes, future value, book value, or depreciated value. And we check the value basically at the end of each period. Typically that's the end of the financial year. So each year we reevaluate our value. We keep doing that until it gets to its scrap value. Okay, so this is typically where the value where the item should be replaced. So the product, whether it's a car, photocopier, phone, is no longer worth using, okay, so it needs to be replaced. That's not necessarily when it gets to a value of 0. So scrap, again, think about a car. Even when a car isn't drivable, you can still basically sell off its parts, so you can scrap it. So it does still have potentially some value, but it's no longer worth using, so it's at the end of its usable life. Okay, so not usable. Try that again. Whereas when something's completely written off, that's when its future value does get to 0. So suppose we keep it around even after its scrap value, it can then get to where it's written off. So the claim becomes worth $0. Okay. So what we're going to look at today is just one type of depreciation. So looking at a certain method for the value going down each time. So very similar to interest, an asset, so that's something that has value, can depreciate in different ways. So there's kind of a parallel to simple interest, a parallel to compound interest, and then something that's a little bit new. So for now, we're going to take a look at the flat rate or straight line depreciation. Again, you can use those interchangeably. So this is kind of the parallel to simple interest. Okay. So what flat rate depreciation is? Well, it's depreciation where a constant amount, so not a constant percent, a constant amount is lost each year. So we can tell you that in kind of two ways. One is just straight up telling you what the value is that you're losing each year. So I might say, I bought something and it loses $300 per year. So I might just be forthright with it, tell you the amount it's losing each year. or we can make you do a little bit of work. We can give it as a percentage of the original value. Okay. So you'll see the parallel to simple interest there. So maybe it loses 5% of the original value. So once I know that 5% of the original value, I just keep subtracting that. So for example, if I bought something that's $1,000, well, 5% of that is $50. Okay, so I lose $50 each year. So what this is going to do is it's going to make a decreasing arithmetic sequence. So basically the D, okay, so the value that we're depreciating by each time, that is our gradient that we're decreasing by each time. So each time we drop, that's going to be our constant amount that we're going down by. So that's a basic idea with depreciation, what it is, and a couple of the key variables that we'll be using.